Keep your hands up.
Keep your hands up, driver. Hands up.
Michael Ramos, you're going to listen to everything we say. You need to listen. Keep your hands up. Keep your hands up. Hey, Hart, on you. Hey, Hart, I got it. Michael Ramos, step out. Keep your hands up. Step out of the car. Michael Ramos, step out of the car with your hands up. Step out of the car with your hands up. Step out of the car. Walk out. Walk out. Walk out towards me. Come. Keep coming. Keep coming. Stop right there. Stop right there. I want you to lift up your shirt. Lift up your shirt from your shoulders. Turn around. Slowly turn around in a circle. Slowly turn around in a circle. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. Stop. Stop. Walk towards me. Michael Ramos, you're going to get impacted if you don't listen. Walk towards me. Hey, move to the center. Move to the center. Michael Ramos. Michael Ramos. Michael Ramos. Hey, listen to me, man. Hey, relax. Relax, Michael. I need you to turn around for me. Michael. Michael, listen to me, man. Michael, listen to me, man. Just listen. I want you to turn around for me, man. Turn around for me, Michael.
I don't have an angle.
Turn around for me. I'll explain it in a second. I can't explain it right now, Michael, but you need to turn around.
Leave your hands up!
Michael. Yeah.
Man, what the fuck you fucking do, man? You're fucking tripping on, dog. Man, what the fuck y'all tripping on, dog? What all y'all got going, dog? Man, what the fuck, man? I don't got no fucking gun, dog. What the fuck? Man, hang on with your fucking gun like that. Leave your hands up, passenger. For what? No, put the fucking gun down, dog. Man, what the fuck, dog? Hey,
do not move! Turn off the car! Turn off the car, Michael! Don't do it!
Get out of the car!
Michael, get out! Hey,
Do not leave!
Stay on the ground!
Do not leave! We're trying to take off the suspect! Do not move! Stay alive!
Hello and welcome to the latest Breaking Conservatarian broadcast, where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over personalities. With me, Jeff Charles, your favorite conservatarian, and today we are going to be discussing the Michael Ramos case. As you can see in that beginning clip, this is the beginning of the encounter between officers working with the Austin Police Department and Michael Ramos, which occurred in April. What I'm going to be doing in this video is I'm going to give it kind of an explanation of what happened, and then I'm going to give you my theory on what I think happened in this case. So that'll be after I kind of go over what happened. I'll go over some of the more salient details of this encounter. And then, and then I'll talk about basically my opinion. I'm going to give you my thoughts on how this whole thing came about in the first place. Now, if you follow me on Twitter, you know that yesterday I was at a Black Lives Matter / Defund the Police protest that happened in downtown Austin. And these protests have been going on for the past few weekends. Basically ever since the death of George Floyd. Austin is one of the cities in which a lot of protests were happening. Some violent, some more peaceful. Last night got a little crazy. I'll also be posting my footage to this YouTube channel here. But the two main reasons why this protest was a little bit more raucous than the others is because of the killing of Garrett Foster, which occurred 7 days ago today, actually, last weekend during a protest. But they were also continuing the protest against the police because of the Michael Ramos case. Now, this has been going on since April. So this incident happened, I believe, it was on April 24th, and the footage of the encounter was just released last week. The city council, or the city government, I should say, not the city council, but the city government had been trying to delay the release of this information. It does seem like there might be a little bit of a cover-up, but it took them forever to release it. I believe that they're supposed to release police footage within 60 days after the incident. And if they had followed that law or rule, it would have been released in June. But here we are. Basically, it was in late July that it was actually released. And so a lot of people were understandably mad about that. So basically, even after the incident happened and the footage wasn't being released, there were already protests for Michael Ramos. And then Ahmaud Arbery came to light. So basically, in Austin, people were demonstrating for Ahmaud Arbery, but also for Michael Ramos. And now that the footage has been released, it essentially confirmed what a lot of Austinites already believed about the shooting. So basically, I'll just start. I'll go over it with you. So on April 24th, about 6:45 or so, about 6:40, or actually, the encounter began at 6:40, but they basically officers were responding to a 911 call, and the call basically told the authorities that Michael Ramos was in his car with a lady who has been unnamed so far, and he gave kind of a few different things that he thought was going on. He thought they were cooking meth, smoking crack, and at one point the 911 caller tells the operator that Michael Ramos had a gun, and that he may or may not have been pointing it at the lady in the car. So naturally, when the police show up, and you can see from the clip that I just showed, that was the very beginning. So you can see that they're already amped up when they come into the situation. Now, mind you, there were 8 officers that responded to this call. It wasn't just, 2 or 3. There were 8 total that came to the scene there. So they basically came in with their guns out. And if you watch the full video, and I will include the link to that in my show notes here. If you watch the video, they're basically planning what they're going to do beforehand. So the video that you'll see was compiled by the APD, Austin Police Department, and it kind of puts together footage from various body cams and the dash cams on the vehicles. So at first they're planning it out. They're basically saying what they're going to do to make sure that they apprehend Ramos peacefully. They don't know who he is yet. They don't know his name or anything like that. Well, actually, no. Actually, they do find out what his name is because they use it in the encounter. So they're proceeding in as if Michael Ramos is armed because that's what the 911 operator was told. So as you can see, they're already amped up when they come in. They've already dialed it up to 11. I'm not sure how many of them had their guns out, but there was obviously more than one. It seems like almost, if not all of them, almost all of them had their guns out, and they were pointing it at the car and at Ramos until he gets out. And so that's the beginning of the scene. So it does take Ramos about a minute before the police show up to actually get out of the car. I kind of edited that clip because I don't want you waiting that whole time, but you can see that in the actual video. But it takes him a little while to get out of the car. Like I said, about a minute and 10 seconds. And he finally gets out, and you can see from the clip that he's obviously freaking out. He has no idea what's going on here. And, they tell him to lift up his shirt so he can show that he does not have a weapon. So at this point, they have a pretty good idea that he's not armed. At least he doesn't, or at the very least, he doesn't have a gun on his person. So they have him turn around so that they can see his back. But all the while, they're yelling at him. They're saying, come towards us. Ramos has no idea what's going on, other than the fact that he's got multiple cops pointing guns at him. And you can just tell from the video that he's very afraid. He doesn't, now I will say he doesn't comply with the officers when they tell him to come towards him, but he's not exactly acting aggressive either. Even his language isn't very aggressive. It's more like, what the hell are you doing? I haven't done anything. Don't shoot me. Please don't. He says over and over again, he pleads with them to not shoot him. And then at one point, he kind of backs up and goes towards the door of the car, but he's still not making any sudden moves or anything like that. And the officers continue to yell instructions at him, come towards us, keep your hands up, which he does, but he's at this point, based on his body language and based on what he's saying, he's afraid to follow their instructions because he thinks they're going to shoot him, or at least he suspects it. So again, they came in amped up, so he's already freaking out, and you can just tell from his mannerisms and from the things he's saying that he is scared out of his mind. So at one point, he's standing behind the door. He hasn't gotten back in the car yet, or he hasn't moved either way. But he's basically saying, "Don't shoot me, don't shoot me." And at one point, he even says, "Put the gun down." So he's basically communicating, "Hey, I'll do what you want, but put your guns down. I'm not, don't shoot me." So the officers continually threaten to impact him, and when they say impact, what that means is that they're going to fire a less lethal round. It's basically like a lead bag filled pellet type of thing. So it's designed to injure but not to kill. Austin police officers have used this technique. They actually got some bad press about it in the beginnings of the protests a few months ago because they shot, I think there were like 3 people that had very serious wounds. And I think one of them may have died, but don't quote me on that. I'd have to check. But either way, they've gotten in trouble for that type of use of force. And it seems that they're kind of backing off that, especially from what I saw last night. That protest was very tense, to say the least. And if you see my footage, you'll see that the officers did employ certain measures to break up the crowd. And they had their guns with them, but as far as I know, there were no shots fired. They apprehended the protesters just using regular means, basically. But anyway, Ramos is behind this door here. And at one point, after he was warned a couple times, like 2 or 3 times, and then one of the officers gives the order, impact him, impact him, impact him, and the officer shoots him with this less lethal round, and it hits him in his leg. So if you watch the video, you'll see at that point he freaks out. He gets into the car, and he starts to drive away from the officers, and they open fire. They fire 3 times into the car, and that's when they killed him. So, at that point, I mean, obviously, I don't know if he died on the scene or if he died in the hospital, but obviously it was the shots that killed him. Now, from the news reports that I read, the officers obviously aren't out in the streets anymore. They're on administrative duty, and it seems like the defense that they're going to use is that they feared for their lives when he started to drive the car because they thought he was going to use the car as a weapon. Now, I'll let you guys be the judge of that, but here's my opinion. He was clearly trying to escape. And he was trying to escape because he had just gotten shot. He didn't know if it was less lethal or not. He didn't stop. It doesn't look like he stopped to think, okay, wait, was this an actual bullet or was this a less lethal round? What should I do here? No, he freaked out. He got in the car. And you can see from the angle that he turns, he's turning away from them and trying to get past them so he can leave. Now, obviously, that's fleeing arrest. They could have gotten him in trouble on that. But in my opinion, there was no need to shoot him because he was not. There's nothing to me that was indicating that he was a threat. They did believe he had a gun. I will say that, but they still had really no real evidence that he was going to be a threat to them. So they shot him, and he died. And guess what? There was no gun on his person. There was no gun in the car. There was no gun anywhere on the premises near that area. There was no gun on the premises, period. So Michael Ramos basically died for no good reason, in my opinion. Now, I will say this, because this is a very tragic situation. I wish that he had complied, but I understand that he was frazzled. I don't know if there were drugs in the car or not. That hasn't been released yet. But the 911 caller argued that there was, but they haven't released that information. But even so, I wish that, because the officers, I don't condone their actions. Like, you shouldn't just show up like that, not guns blazing, but guns out. You have 8 guns on you. Nobody's used to that. So he freaked out. I wish he would have been able to just stop and calm down and just, do what the officers were saying, because I don't think that they would have shot him if that happened. At the same time, the officers coming in like that, they created that situation, from what I can see. He even said, put the guns down. You could have had one officer with his gun at the ready. We had 8 guys. What was he really going to do to you? Especially after you saw that he was unarmed, because they had him lift up a shirt, and he obeyed that. He lifted up his shirt. He spun around so that they can see that he's not armed. So at that point, I don't see why he needed to have that many guns pointed at him. And these aren't just little handguns. If you watch the video, they have different areas of footage. I mean, these are long guns. So I can't blame him for freaking out. And when people freak out, when people are afraid, they don't act rationally. None of us do. Now, some of us may have been able to have the presence of mind to say, let me just get on the ground or come towards them like they're asking. But I mean, we are all familiar with the Daniel Shaver situation. He did exactly what they wanted, and then his shorts fell off, and he reached back to pull him up, and now he's dead because of it, because an officer shot him to death because he was trying to pull up his shorts. And he basically claimed that he was afraid for his life and thought he had a gun while wearing basketball shorts. But anyway, by the way, that officer got off. He's not going to ever be held accountable for what he did. So in this case, it's very hard for me to excuse the actions of the police. If he had been driving the car towards them, or maybe even towards that kind of like at an angle where it could have hit him, then I can understand, because there are many times where suspects will use a car as a weapon, and I'm not the type that expects police officers to just risk their lives just because they don't want to shoot somebody. No, if somebody's actually threatening you, then I get it. Pull your gun, shoot. It's still a tragic situation, but in those instances, I can't blame the police for what they do. They have lives too. They have families. If they need to defend themselves, then they need to defend themselves. In this case, I'm not saying that was necessary. Now, there may be more evidence that comes out that that changes things a bit. If that happens, then maybe I'll change my position. But with what we have now, I'm just not seeing it. What I'm seeing is a man who was needlessly killed by the state, and I really hope that they're held accountable for that. But there is another aspect of this case that I really want to examine. It's something that I haven't really seen in other news sources. I've seen it kind of alluded to, but nobody's really digging into this. So I want to. But before I do that, while you're thinking about it, please subscribe. Please hit that bell. Please share this video. Now I'm going to get into my theory as to what happened here, and I want to go and take a look at the 911 call. So I'm going to play some of it for you here.
Austin 911, do you need police, fire, or EMS?
Police.
Okay, to what address or location?
2601 South Pleasant Valley.
I'm sorry, you said 2601 South Pleasant Valley?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on just one moment, please. Okay, at the Rosemont at Oak Valley Apartments?
Yeah. I'm in the Rosemont Apartments. It's a gold and black Prius outside.
I'm sorry, the phone is real muffled. I couldn't hear what you were saying.
I can barely hear you.
Okay, I need you to start over. I couldn't understand anything you were saying. What's going on?
They're in the car smoking crack and cooking meth.
Okay, what color and type of vehicle is it?
It's a gold Prius. It's a gold Prius with a Hispanic man and a Hispanic woman. They got toilet paper in the front dash window. And I'm seeing him with a gun. He had a gun too.
You said a gold and black Prius?
Yes, and he has a gun. He has a gun to this lady.
You see him holding one to her?
Yes, I see him holding a gun, ma'am.
Is he doing that right now?
Yes.
Just one moment. Is he pointing it at her?
He's holding it up.
He's holding it up, or is he pointing it at her?
He was pointing it at her, but he got, ma'am, I don't know what's going on, but I need y'all to come quick.
Okay, but I need to know the difference. Is he pointing it at her or just holding it in his up?
He's holding it. He's holding it.
Okay. Is he you said Hispanic male? Can you see what color clothing he has on?
It's like a white shirt. It's a gold and black Prius. He has...
Are they Okay, I need to know. I understand. I already have officers en route. I'm trying to get this information to them. Where at in the parking lot? Is he by a particular building number or? Okay, I can't understand anything you're saying. You're pulling the phone away or something.
The first left. It's going to be the first left.
When you enter the apartments?
Yes, it's going to be the first left. It's going to be the first left.
Okay, I do, like I said, have officers already en route right now.
The Austin Police Department.
If you were paying attention to that 911 call, and you can always see it again if you click on the link to the video, because that video doesn't just show the interaction between the Austin police officers and Michael Ramos. It also shows the details of the 911 call. But if you look at that 911 call, if you look carefully at it, you can see that there's something that's not quite kosher about it. There's a lot that is wrong with this call, especially if you were to read a transcript of it rather than just hearing it played to you. If you read it, you can see that there are some issues here that are very, very, very suspicious at the least. So basically, there are parts in this where some of his statements, the caller's statements, don't quite add up. I don't know if it's he or she. I'm just going to say he. You can call me a sexist or whatever. I don't care. But there are parts where there's some inconsistencies, and there are just some very telling statements that this caller makes. The call starts out, and the operator is basically saying, Austin 911, do you need fire, police, or EMS? Caller says, I need police. And so the operator gets the address, and when she asks, is it at the Oak Valley Apartments, he responds with, yes, it's the Rosemont apartment. It's a gold and black Prius outside. Now, mind you, before that, he had said nothing about what was supposedly going on. The first thing that he comes out of the gate with after verifying the location is that there's a gold and black Prius outside. Now, if I'm seeing suspicious activity, let's say I'm seeing it across the street in a car, I think most people aren't going to mention the make and model of the car or the color and model of the car first. First, you're going to tell the operator what's happening or what you see happening. Like if you see a man beating his wife in the car, the first thing that you're going to say is, hey, there's a guy beating up his wife across the street. I can see it. And then later in the call, you might get to the car. You might get to the description of the car so that they know where to go. But he didn't do that. He started out with the car, which I'm going to circle back to that a little bit later. But just keep that in mind. His first priority was telling the operator that there was a gold and black Prius outside. So the call continues. I mean, at some points the operator couldn't really hear the caller, maybe because they were having issues with the phone. So she says, "I can barely hear you." Or the caller tells the operator that he can't really hear her. So the operator says, okay, I need you to start over because she couldn't understand what he was saying. And he comes back with, they're in the car smoking crack and cooking meth. Okay, what color and type of vehicle is it? And then he repeats, it's a gold Prius. It's a gold Prius with a Hispanic man and a Hispanic woman. They've got toilet paper in the front dash window. And I seen him with a gun. He had a gun too. So I'm going to stop right there. So after they get through the noise of not really being able to hear each other, the operator asks him to start over, and he comes back in with, they're in the car smoking crack and cooking meth. Now, I don't know much about drugs, but I'm pretty sure that you can't cook meth in a car. If any of you know whether or not this is possible, hit me up, you can correct me. But even if it was, I'm not sure if you can smoke crack and cook meth in a car at the same time. That's already suspicious. It almost sounds like he just, that's what popped into his head when he made the call, and he just said that. It doesn't seem like he really planned this call out. Anyway, I'm going to get back to that later too. So after that, he describes the car again. He lets him know that it's a gold Prius. And now he starts to describe the people inside, a Hispanic man and a Hispanic woman. Then he mentions the toilet paper, which is also important. I'm going to circle back on that as well, but I'm just going to go through here really quick. But then after that, he says, and I seen him with a gun. He had a gun too. Now, it's important to note here that after he mentions that, the operator goes back to the car and she says, you said a gold and black Prius? And then the caller says, yes, and he has a gun. He has a gun to this lady. So now he not only does he have a gun, now he's implying that he is pointing a gun at this, like he's holding this lady at gunpoint. And so at this point, the operator kind of wants to clarify, right? She wants to make sure that she understands exactly what's happening here. So after he says that he has a gun to this lady, the operator says, you see him holding one to her. And the caller says, yes, I seen him holding a gun, ma'am. She asks, is he doing that right now? The caller says, yes. And the operator says, okay, is he pointing it at her? Then the caller comes back with, he's holding it up. So now he seems like he's kind of backing off just a little bit. But then the operator says, the operator doesn't really let this go, and you'll find out why a little bit later. But the operator says, he's holding it up, or is he pointing it at her? And then he comes back with, he was pointing it at her. Well, actually, I'm just going to read this verbatim. He says, he was pointing it at her, but he got, ma'am, I don't know what's going on, but I need y'all to come quick. That's exactly what he said. So first he says that he was holding this lady at gunpoint, basically. And then on further questioning from the operator, he kind of backs off a little bit and just says, oh no, he's just holding it. He was just holding it up. And then when she continues to question that, to try to clarify exactly what's happening, because the operator needs to know this, he comes back with, he starts out saying that he was pointing at her, but then he kind of abandons that whole storyline completely by saying, ma'am, I don't know what's going on. I just need you to get people over here as quickly as possible. But then the operator still doesn't let it go. She says, okay, but I need to know the difference. Is he pointing it at her or just holding it up? And the caller comes back with, he's holding it. He's holding it. So after this part, they kind of, they're still going through the call just for a few seconds longer. And the operator asks him to describe the male in the car, to describe Ramos. And but what's interesting is that when she says, she asks him, what color clothing does he have on? And the caller says, it's a white shirt. And then there's some unintelligible words in there where the phone kind of is weird. But then he goes right back to the car. He says, it's a gold and black Prius. And so after that, the operator basically says, I've got officers en route. And she gets instructions to give the officers on how to, get into the complex and all that. But the operator needed to know what was going on. That's why she kept questioning him on it. There's a difference between somebody having a gun and having a gun and pointing it at somebody. That tells you the level of urgency. But in this call, he obviously was able to get enough urgency going to get the officers to believe that they were going into a situation that could potentially be dangerous. So here's here's what I want to circle back to. There's a few points that were in that call that I really want to talk about. And it's obviously going to apply to the theory that I have here. And you probably already know where I'm going with this, but I'm still going to, go through this process anyway. So here's what I think. I think that the caller knew both Ramos and the woman in the car. They could have been friends. They could have been enemies. They could have been family members. They had a relationship. This person had a relationship with these two people. The reason I believe that, well, there's a couple reasons I believe that. Like with the lady, he refers to her as this lady. So the word this is also a word that implies a level of distance. So you can use the word this, or you can use the word that. If I say that lady, I'm putting more distance between myself and her. If I say this lady, I'm closing the distance a little bit. Now, I mean, like with an object, like I have this phone, and this is my phone. But if it was somebody else's phone, I would say it's that phone. I mean, unless I'm holding it. But if it's somebody else's phone, you say it's that phone because now there's a distance. These are things that we do unconsciously. Now, it doesn't mean that in every single situation. I'm just saying, I think in this situation it applies. And the other reason why I think he knew these two people is because I think that he has been in that car before. He's been in that gold and black Prius. He mentions that so many times in the call, especially in areas where you wouldn't expect it, in areas where it's not even relevant. He also knows that there's toilet paper on the front dash of the car. Now, if he had just been walking by, he may have seen that. But he also says that Ramos had a gun, and Ramos didn't have a gun. I think the reason he knew about the toilet paper is because he's been in that car before. And if he's been in that car before, he knows both of them. I'll just go here. So the most suspicious part of this, obviously, is the inconsistency, right? At first, basically, if you look at the whole call, this caller wanted the operator to believe that Michael Ramos and this lady were smoking crack, cooking meth, and he wanted us to believe that Ramos was smoking crack, cooking meth, and holding a lady at gunpoint all at the same time. That kind of goes back to what I was saying before. I don't think he planned this out very well. I think this was like a spur of the moment type of thing. So he says that he has the lady at gunpoint. Then he backs off of it and says he was just holding the gun up. And if you notice, if you look at there should be a transcript out there. But even if you watch the video, it has a text of the call. As you already saw. And he says let me go back. So when the operator asks about the vehicle, he tells her that it's a gold Prius. He mentions the toilet paper, and then he mentions the gun. So he had already told the operator that they're smoking crack and cooking meth. What I think happened here is that when he said that, he didn't get the reaction that he wanted. He didn't get the level of urgency. The operator didn't say, "Oh my gosh, they're cooking meth, they're smoking crack, I need to get somebody out there right away." She just went on with, what color was the car, and then at that point, then he says, "Oh, they have a gun too." So that's going to escalate things. He's trying to get a certain reaction. But even after he mentions the gun, she asks about the car again. Then he responds with, not only did he have a gun, now he has a gun to the lady. So that ends up getting him the reaction that he wanted. But when the operator starts questioning him on it, then he kind of backs off of it. So you can see that he has a certain agenda here. There's an objective. And basically what I think happened here is that this person may have had a beef with Michael Ramos and this girl. I don't know how well he knew them. They could have been acquaintances. They could have been the best of friends, and it could have went sour. There are a number of different things that could have happened here. But the fact that he is so obsessed with the car indicates two things to me. And it's important that we remember that it was the very first thing that he said after they confirmed the address. The very first thing he said was that it's a black Prius outside. Remember, he didn't say, "Hey, I see these people out there smoking crack and cooking meth and, waving a gun around." That was not as high of a priority as the gold and black Prius. And obviously he was telling the truth about the Prius because we saw the video. It was a gold and black Prius. So to me, that can mean one of two things, or it could mean both. There's something special about this car to him. Maybe he wanted the car. Maybe he was jealous that Ramos had this car. I don't know. Or he could have been harping on the car so aggressively because he wanted to make doubly sure that the police knew who to target when they came on the scene. Now, you couldn't really see Ramos in the car, so he said that there were a Hispanic lady and a Hispanic man, but that could be anybody. He wanted the car to be known because he wanted them to know exactly where to go. Plus, the way the car is set up, you can't really see inside of it. You can see from the video, you can't really see who's inside it. You don't even know what Ramos looks like until he gets out. So, it seems to me that might be the more likely motivation, but it could be both, or I could just be wrong about all of it. But but I think the reason why he harped on the car so much is because he wanted the police to know exactly who to target and where that person was. And yeah, I do think that this was a deliberate setup by somebody who had a beef. Now we can get more conspiratorial with this, and I'm sure people will. Maybe they'll say it was a setup from the government or whatever. I don't know. I'll just tell you that my theory is that the caller had some type of relationship with Ramos and the woman in the car, and he didn't like them, and he called the police on purpose so that they would come and either arrest or kill him. Now, I don't know what his intention was, whether he just wanted to see him get arrested, or if he was hoping that this would go down exactly the way it did, because this did get him killed. And I think if he never mentioned the gun, the police wouldn't have rolled up the way they did. Doesn't exonerate what the police did, but I think without the mention of a gun, the Austin police officers would not have rolled up with their guns drawn, yelling, shouting orders. I do not think that it would have been as tense as it was if it were just a regular drug kind of thing. They would, obviously they would have been ready for an encounter, but they're not going into that situation thinking that there was a gun. So the analysis that I basically did of that call, this is an actual thing. This is something that people do. It's called a forensic statement analysis. And I'm not an expert at this, so I'm going to give the disclaimer right now. This is something that I like to do as a hobby for fun. I have a friend who is an expert, and I'm not going to mention their name, but because they wouldn't want me to. But this person has done statement analysis for years. She's worked with various law enforcement agencies, and I believe that they've even worked at the federal level as well. And this is a practice that people in law enforcement will use to detect deception from a suspect or from a witness or from whomever. And it's basically a practice that involves taking a statement or a transcript of a statement from a witness or from a suspect. So this could be during an interrogation. So like say the police suspect somebody of a crime, they pull them in and they interrogate them, and somebody who was versed in statement analysis would have a printed out version or a text version of that interview, and then they would analyze it. They do this with 911 calls, like the one for this case, to see if the person calling in is being deceitful. It's one of the ways that they can find out if the person who called 911 was actually the person who committed the crime. So again, I'm not an expert at this, so you don't have to take my opinion seriously at all. I'm just saying this is just my opinion, but I will tell you that with my friend who has done this for a living in a past life, they actually agreed with me and actually added more context, because obviously I'm not an expert, so I didn't catch everything in the statement, but I knew something was wrong with this. And they basically came to the same conclusion, that this was a setup, that the caller knew the victims, that they had been in the car, and that the objective was to either get them killed or get them arrested or get them into some kind of trouble. I lean more towards wanting to get them killed, because if they didn't, then they never had to make up the gun thing. Remember, there was no gun found. No gun. None. So, again, this is just my opinion. I'm not claiming to have inside information. I'm not claiming that I have insiders with secret knowledge. This is just what I think based on what I read, based on the facts that are presented to me. So please just take it as my opinion and not as some grand claim. You might agree with me. You might disagree with me. That's fine. But I will, unless new evidence comes up, I think that the APD needs to look into this 911 caller. I don't know if they'd ever be able to prove that he was lying, because I guess you have to, because he could just say, oh, well, I thought he had a gun, so that's why I said that. I don't know how that works. That's above my pay grade. But that being said, there was more to the story, and it wasn't just what the police officers did. I think that the 911 caller is in large part responsible for what happened to Michael Ramos. And even if that element weren't in the equation, I still believe that what the police did was wrong. I don't think that Michael Ramos should have lost his life. I guess if this case becomes bigger news, people will start digging through his background. You know how they do. But the other aspect is that Michael Ramos was a minority, but he wasn't black. So this story I think does deserve nationwide coverage. And it's sad that it won't get it just because he wasn't the right race. But this, to me, was a disgusting abuse of power. Do I think that the officers went into that situation wanting to kill Ramos? I have no idea. That may not have been their intention. But I think that there were several missteps made here by the APD. And the thing is, the Austin Police Department isn't really known for police brutality as much as, say, the LAPD or the NYPD or police in Baltimore. They don't quite have that reputation, and I know that at certain periods they have put work into making sure that they don't have that reputation. So I think that the majority of Austin police officers are fine. What I saw at the protest yesterday, just with my own two eyes, I did see them having to rough certain people up, but I didn't see any punches. I didn't see any kicks. They didn't take their batons out. When they arrested people, yeah, they took them down. And I think at one point pepper spray was used. I don't know if that was a protester or the police, but I know it was used because I was feeling the effects of it. I wasn't close enough to where it took me out. But again, non-lethal means anytime they took a protester down, there were multiple officers doing it to make it easier to do it in a way that wouldn't cause permanent injury. And I really can't even believe I'm saying this. Like, you guys know how hard I am on the police. But from what I saw, I don't really think I saw anything that I would take issue with. To me, the protesters were putting people more in danger than the police were in this case. But that being said, this specific situation was not just. Michael Ramos should not have lost his life. There were plenty of other ways to handle that, especially if they had been given de-escalation training. One way they could have de-escalated that was by not pointing 8 guns at him. Again, I don't know if it was 8 guns. I just know that there were 8 officers. But there was definitely multiple guns pointed at him, and he had no idea what the hell was going on, because for all he knows, he's just sitting in the car. Even if he was doing drugs, you don't normally roll up on people with guns just because they're smoking some meth or whatever. That's like something that you do in an actual drug bust. But even so, I think that as more facts come out, this issue it's going to become bigger here in Austin because of the footage being released. But you saw what happened in those protests. They weren't just about Garrett Foster. They were also about Michael Ramos. And Michael Ramos was killed by the state. Garrett Foster, that was a horrible situation. And I blame both sides of that issue, but that's a whole other video. But this is a man who lost his life because government officials didn't do the right thing. And I think that it's just important to recognize that example. And I think that, while we're conjuring the names of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, I think Michael Ramos should be right up there with them. Like, I read the reports, his family is devastated, just like everybody else's was. So I think he deserves the recognition as well. I think his case deserves that recognition. And instead of just reacting to the defund the police movement on the right, maybe we should actually put forth alternatives to defunding the police, because this is a problem. The solution is not to pretend like there's no issue with the police department. People say that there's no police reform needed. People who say that the police do not need to be reformed are not taking this seriously. They're not serious people. They're just trying to promote a narrative, and I prefer the truth. The truth is that many of the police departments in this country need reform. We don't need to abolish them. We don't need to defund them to the point to where they can't do their jobs. But we need to take a long, serious look at this. And we know that the far left isn't going to do it. So it's up to people on the right and sensible people on the left to actually try to have actual solutions instead of allowing the national Marxist Black Lives Matter movement to take attention off of the real issues. There are black community leaders in New York City and in Minneapolis who are speaking out against defunding the police, but the media will never cover it. These black leaders know that the National Black Lives Matter organization are basically white progressives. And I keep saying it. They're white progressives in political blackface. They are using black people to push their agenda, one that has nothing to do with saving black lives or even minority lives. Michael Ramos was Hispanic. Plenty of Hispanics get unjustly killed by the police. It's not just black people. The more we shine a light on this and shine a light on the white people who are unjustly killed by the police, that's when we will actually see progress. Because other people will see, hey, this isn't just happening to black people. This is happening to everybody. Maybe happening to black people more, but still, it's happening to everybody. We need to fix this, and we need to fix this now. The people on the right and the left who are sensible need to be the adults in the room, because the far left are basically children. They're not handling this like adults. They just want to push an agenda that has nothing to do with saving lives. So the adults in the room need to formulate solutions and take the steps necessary to implement those solutions. So I'll leave you with that. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was kind of heavy, but I think it was necessary. Please share it. Please share it. And you know what I'm going to say. Please subscribe. Click that button right now. I'm watching you. I'm right there with you. I'm watching you. Did you click it yet? Click it now. Click it. Please subscribe, and I will see you next time.